Uh, oh, yeah, thanks. So I do hear the issue. It's a legitimate one, and as those musicians and leaders become more prominent, and we can help them if they're of high quality, we'll definitely spotlight them. But part of what we are doing is trying to find people that already have an audience, and that's why we use Todd's, because he's really well known. And as effectively as of today, JLTV is on Cox Cable in Arizona, which is why we chose said Arizona guy. So that people in Arizona would know that we were spotlighting Arizona Jewish community. Anyways, I will hopefully be able to provide lots of good music for everybody, no matter what. Uncle Beth will be on the front of that. Have that experience. So to our text and to what we're going to read today, which is chapter 20 of we're now streaming on Facebook now. Doing this, etc. What we read last week, what we picked up was David won. David won. He defeated Absalom, his son, in rebellion. His son Absalom was killed by Joab, his commander. David didn't want anyone to kill his son, but as Joab pointed out, that's what had to be done. And now it's time for David to get back in charge and to show that he loves the people that fought with him, that he will punish the people who fought against him, and that David, who initially is completely grief-stricken over his son's death, that Joab calls him out on it and says that's inappropriate and that's going to cause you to lose support. And you will finally completely lose support if you don't show love and connection to your supporters. What was interesting is that David's own tribe, the Judites, were not on his side. The Israelites in the north, many of them, were not on his side. He did not have a lot of people on his side. If people were going to bet when David escaped Jerusalem with his professional soldiers and his own supporters, who was going to win this battle, no one would have really been on David. So it was a situation where people were somewhat surprised, not completely shocked, that David emerged victorious. Now, David does have a huge advantage over Absalom in his side, in that David is a hardened guerrilla fighter and knows how to live in the wilderness, and he's done this before. Saul was chasing him for years, and he was able to evade, the army, and he's wise. He has wisdom on his side. But the sheer number of supporters that are on Absalom's side, you would have thought that there's no way. And look, we've seen this happen before. We thought there's no way for this person to win leadership, and they do, and we're all kind of shocked about that. It happens. It happens. It's happening in our own country. So David's now come back. Look, I made some comparisons or analogies to what we've seen in our own country in the last few years. There definitely are, people would find that odd that I would make those comparisons, but I'm not, saying this because I like either party or like any candidate in particular. But there are some very interesting analogies to David, and God forbid someone's going to say compared to Donald Trump, but there are some interesting comparisons, and I think what's interesting to think about, because it is a possibility, what happens if Trump is reelected and he comes back into office, and what happens to the people who went against him, who did support him, but didn't do it to the effect that was enough for him? What would happen? And so we get a little bit of that in last week and now in this week. So I think it's an interesting question. I will tell you that just on the face of it, David is much more forgiving and much more concerned with creating unity than Trump seems to be.
Well, David's also a better leader.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons, right? But what's interesting about it is there is still this overarching kind of question, which is fine, but can you trust people who weren't on your side? You know, and how do you integrate those people? Well, we saw King David last week. I mean, one guy, Amasa, he made him his own general, and basically took Yoav out of the picture to make Amasa the head of the army. Amasa was the general that Absalom had called on. And again, he's from the same family as Yoav. He's from David's family. He's from Yoav's family. He's got good yichus, as we call it. He's got good genetics connections. But David did that so that the Absalom's side would think, oh, this guy, he's going to be on our side too. And presidents do that. I mean, presidents don't always blow out everybody that was in the previous administration. I mean, Obama held over Robert Gates as Secretary of Defense from George W. Bush. So people, I mean, there were wars going on that he felt, you know, especially in Afghanistan, where he felt he needed to have, you know, consistency. But there are a lot of times that presidents have done that, even ones from different parties, where they don't, you know, they used to happen all the time. You know, but still actually.
Colin Powell.
Federal Reserve chairs, you know, very rarely did it. You know, that's one of the reasons why we made Supreme Court justices lifetime tenure, so that new presidents wouldn't come in and just reshape their, you know, their judicial system every time they were in power or Congress. So, you know, people, we've seen administrations, you know, bring in people that are not necessarily from that side. I mean, Abraham Lincoln famously did it when he was president. He created a cabinet made up of people who he didn't agree with. So David seems to follow that type of leadership style, which is not just what sense. So David is still in the midst of this. We kind of, I wanted to kind of get to the end of it, but it goes on. And in this week, we're going to finish that part, but we were kind of in the midst of it last week. We finished chapter 19, where the people of Judah basically say, you know, yeah, we'll get David in and we'll reinstall him. And the rest of the Israelites, the last thing we read is the rest of the Israel, or the northern tribes said, hey, you don't get to claim him. He's our king too. And so they actually kind of fight the north and the south over who David really represents. And there seems to be this tension, real tension that still exists between the north and south. So we're still in the midst of David's reshuffling of his organization and his new administration. It's essentially his return to administration. He wasn't gone for very long, but he was gone for long enough that he has to resort stuff. Some of it he's going to resort, some of it he's going to reshuffle, and some of it's going to be done for him, as what happens.
Was Absalom the oldest son?
Was not necessarily the oldest son, but he was one of the oldest sons that was still left. Because remember, Amnon, he killed Amnon. So he already kind of jumps up a place just because he killed Amnon. But he's definitely in that party. We don't know how old he is in that mix, but he's definitely in the top right.
And is he still, David still with Beth?
It is still with Bathsheba. It's interesting you asked that question. Why did you ask that question, Marcia?
Just because there's been so many concubines and so many.
Yeah, we haven't heard a lot about Bathsheba. So that's a fair question.
There's been a lot of.
Where is Bathsheba? We have not heard, we've
We
not
haven't heard much about
we've not
those
heard-
concubines or
we've
wives.
not heard, exactly, we've not heard much about the family. Where the other son, where the other sons went? Where did all the other boys go? Well, where did all the other heirs go when Absalom revolted? Did some of them stay in Jerusalem because they thought maybe they'd get a better position with Absalom? Or did they go with David because they said, if I stay here with Absalom, I'm dead. I'm another potential rival, he'll kill me. So did David's sons go with him or did they stay back? We don't know what happened to all of them. What we do know that the Judites, his own tribe, isn't 100% behind him initially. When he comes back, he actually has to kind of renegotiate with them. Not renegotiate, basically says, hey, where are you guys? I'm your tribe, where are you? And then they come to him, and then the irony, of course, or the problem is the rest of the northern tribes. Why is Judah suddenly? You were the ones who actually wanted to reinstate you before they did. So that's the last thing that we just read. So now we're going to read about some of these other, if you will, these reshuffling. So Rosemary, would you like to take over?
I will. I do have a little question though. I just, as you were going over the last chapter, I noticed he said he was listening to this, asking whether he could still listen to the singing of men and women, and I was kind of surprised by that because I know that at least in the halacha, men aren't supposed to be listening to the singing of women except relatives.
So you're talking about
He's talking about the court. And he's Barzillai. And he says, can I still listen to the singing of men and women?
yeah.
Go back up.
So it sounds like David's court had women singing.
Yeah, interesting, right? So it seems like in the court, right? Maybe not for religious reasons, but in performance reasons.
Mhm.
See if there's any. There, Rashi doesn't talk about it. Let's see. Let's see if the Talmud has anything. No, we derive the ears of the elderly become heavy. They can't hear. Interesting thing.
What?
What? So yeah, Rosemary's question is a good one. I'll look it up. I'm gonna
Thank you.
see if there's any halachic discussion about it. I did notice that one of the times that I read it, and I found it interesting because it's not. Look, it's not the only time that we hear about women singing. We hear about women singing, obviously, in the area when they cross the Sea of Reeds. It's pretty clear. Now, of course, the way you can understand it is she means the women are singing and the women are singing together, not with the men. Here, it seems clear that a man is listening to women singing.
But could it be their slaves or be other, no.
The problem is that he's not, King David, if he has women singing in the court, he's not. Women are not supposed to be performing music in any sense of the word, whether it's for, look, one of the reasons why in Orthodox homes, they don't have television or they don't have, access to media nowadays, so computers and phones and everything else that you have is because you have women singing and you're not supposed to hear truth. Because it's considered to be seductive and it's considered to be, create sexual feelings in men. Yes, other than the fact that men do have a harder time controlling themselves than women. That doesn't mean, that's not an excuse for keeping women from being heard or sung or being seen in public. That would be an argument. And so the way that one of the ways that is very unfair and is terrible and discriminating. To not allow women to sing in public or to dress and to be their face, right? So this is all true, but it also does, you know, the logic does is that will keep people from singing.
Just go around the block.
There's no question that people find ways to. But it also, there is also no question that we live in a highly sexualized world where both men and women, there are consequences to this. Roll it back, should roll it back, there are consequences. Again, I don't have the answer to it. It is a problem that we have not figured out the solution to. So,
Lots of those.
but there is no question that women sing, men find that sexually provocative.
Have you heard me sing? Just kidding.
The only point that I make with people on this is that the point is that there are women, many people would say are not physically as attractive as other women by whatever subjective standards they are, but because they sing beautifully, they are attractive to people. They'll tell you that the point has been made many times. Not by me, but by other people. You know, I would say, I get it. I don't think that women should be pushing that. It's ironic that we have this discussion as I just talked about singing. Shabbat services. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why synagogues for a long time didn't have. And I think we're still catching up on it. There are more women rabbis today than there are more Indian men, but there are not more women taking prominent positions in music. Yeah, maybe it'll change, but I think that there's still. I think it's still somewhat reflective of there's a lot of reasons for it, but I mean, I think you'd still see that in music, there are women who are superstars. There's always going to be Lady Gaga or Whitney Houston.
Got it. Rabbi can't do. Lady Gaga.
True, so, there always will be women singers who are superstars, but there is definitely still there's an imbalance with the amount. I mean, if you look at it just again, sheer numbers of male performing artists, people who on tour, bands, and everything else, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you go on any kind of metric, if you want to say there's still disproportionate represented. Okay.
Been that way. You look at the 40s and 50s.
It's always so I don't know what the answer to that is. I know that I think cantorial music and look, a lot, Todd being one of them, the guy that I showed you before, Craig Todd, many of these people had career paths where they wanted to be performing artists. And I don't want to say they fell back into the cantor, even Kenny else. All of these people were performing and then kind of took on cantorial jobs. It's almost the reverse of the jazz singer. There are people who are cantors that then break into popular music. It's usually the other way around, which is that people don't hit superstardom and then they come into a regular gig. Somebody's gonna get mad at me for saying this because this is not on Facebook, but that people find stable jobs as cantors that were not, did not become visual artists. Again, it's not like a knock on it. It's a good gig, and it's great that there are such talented people writing and performing Jewish music. But a lot of people did have a first career goal of being a
Chazan that goes through cantorial school, it's not easy for women to sing those songs, those prayers.
So Mike's point is that there's traditional Chazan which is not suited or was not composed for women.
Right.
That is true. The counter argument that the more popular music today, look, about 15 years ago, the Reform movement renamed their cantorial school Debbie Friedman Cantorial. It's not Deborah Friedman, it's Debbie Cantorial School of Sacred Music.
Right.
That Reform cantors, some of them lost their minds over that because she was not a trained cantor. No. She did not go to cantorial school. She did not train as a cantor. But her style of music, which was folk contemporary music, that was adapted for Jewish music, became more popular. The most popular was actually Jewish music. And so there were people who would say, okay, the cantorial style of music is I'm having lunch today with Nate Lamb, one of my favorite cantors in LA. Who studied cantorial pieces and was the cantor for 45 years at Stephen S. Ross. And a Reform synagogue. And continued to reform traditional cosmos. But there was a definite there's a shrinking space for that in today's landscape. And so that is a reality. So did the Debbie Friedman School get out? Well, it's called the Friedman School. Are the cantors that are trained today, especially women cantors, are they going to be better suited for what congregations will want in the future? I don't. It's hard for me to say. It's definitely more likely than it was before. So my point is, there was a traditional Chazanut that was more suited for male voices. But if that style is less popular today, what they're like, okay, so you're training in a modality that isn't as popular. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
I'm less popular, because I prefer.
I will tell you that that's what we're doing.
But I know I'm the minority.
Look, part of the Chazanut, traditional Chazanut was operatic.
Right.
It was not easy to sing along, right? People like to sing along.
Not me.
You like this.
No. No.
So people cannot sing along with traditional Chazanut.
No.
It's too flourishing. All right.
I do think that there's a big transition though in learning to enjoy this change that's happened, right? I mean, because I think me being raised, well, anybody want to be or gay or anything. So it's a transition, and it's quite enjoyable to be able to see a variation of things.
Yeah.
Especially now that it's in the conservative movement too.
I think I think
It's
we have to be open to that. So I mean, it's one of the reasons why we're still featuring the LA Jewish Symphony and the chorale. And again, even if it's shrinking, it still shouldn't go away because it was an art form. Anyways,
It's
so
really
just
good.
Rosemary, I blame you for this, but no, it's a very important discussion because it's something that goes on in my head all the time. I think about my responsibility as a curator. I'm not a creator of Jewish music, I'm a curator of somebody who has, is bringing these voices together. It is something I think about. I take it seriously. Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting too, that when we brought in from LA, from inner city, when we brought in the Baptist choirs and stuff, and they join in harmony with music and song and, Jewish stuff. I think it's just incredible, because that shows an openness of sharing religion as well, or not. I don't care how you
Music's a great way to do that.
Yeah, it's just another way of sharing.
All right.
When are we gonna do that again?
I don't know. I have no idea. Now that people are doing music together more in person, I think there's a lot of possibilities. I do. All right, so great question. It's been definitely on the minds of a lot of us lately. So, Rosemary, would you like to start?
Okay. Whoops, my screen just went away. There, okay. A scoundrel named Sheva, son of Bikri, a Benjaminite, happened to be there. He sounded the horn and proclaimed, "We have no portion in David, no share in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, O Israel."
Wait 1 second. turn you up in here a little bit. Hold this. Now, continue. Oh, I gotta move it up. Hopefully I turned it up. Hopefully I turned up the sanctuary sound. Okay. Keep going. Okay.
All the men of Israel left David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri, but the men of Judah accompanied their king from the Jordan to Jerusalem. David went to his palace in Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 concubines he had left to mind the palace and put them in a guarded place. He provided for them, but he did not cohabit with them. They remained in seclusion until the day they died,
Yeah.
living widowhood.
So,
Appropriate.
so Marcia, Marcia's question of what happens to these ladies. We've not read about Bathsheba, because assumingly Bathsheba did not stay behind, and she's not a concubine. But the concubines, the ones that Absalom slept with, and everyone knew that he slept with them, David does not touch them again. He does take care of them. He gives them a stipend. He takes care of them. But he does not sleep with them again. And that is the translation lo ba. He did not come to them again.
So these were Absalom's concubines?
They were his, and then Absalom slept with them, and then he never touches them again once Absalom. So the problem, of course, is that if one of them became pregnant, it'd be a question of whose baby it was.
Oh.
Back in the day, they thought once you slept with somebody, they never knew if any of those cells, those sperm cells, were floating around. They didn't know that they had a shelf life. You couldn't be sure. Now, I will tell you this: how would you really know? Because David and Absalom shared 50% of David's DNA. So if it came out looking like David, it could also be looking like Absalom, right? So there is something to be said for that. But the story, of course, I don't know. Was it a happy ending for these concubines? Don't know.
Sounds like they were in prison.
Sounds like they were in prison. On the other hand, if they didn't have a lot of say in the relationship in the first place, not having to sleep with the king maybe came as somewhat of a relief to them. We really don't know. It's an interesting midrash to write. What was it like to be part of this? Look, they're in seclusion, which seems to be
And guarded.
they're not able to have interactions with anybody, which means they're not allowed to sleep with anybody. They're not allowed to have any other relationships with anybody. So this is a pretty troubling situation that this group of 10 women never get to have companionship. So they got and essentially live like widows,
Yeah, but
which
even
widows don't have to live like that. Widows can be
in
married.
Egypt, they, those women kind of, but they had their baths and they had their little
There's
fans.
no question
I
the
don't
lifestyle.
think it was a bad,
There's
a
no
bad,
question the lifestyle may not have been prison,
right.
but this idea of not being able to ever have anybody touch you again. Look, I mean, after living as a concubine, maybe they felt that was relief. I don't know.
Yeah.
Listen, it's hard for me as a man to understand what that would have felt like. It's hard for me to even comprehend what it was like for a woman. Look, well, I mean, at the end of the day, if they look at remember, I mean, we can say, oh, this is horrible, they're in seclusion. At the end of the day, they were in seclusion anyways, to some extent, if they were part of the king's harem, right? So their life was, I mean, they were never going to get out of this situation anyways. Did they want to get out of the situation? Was this something that they took on knowing, like, were they forced to be part of the king's harem, or was it a choice? Was that an honor?
But
Was that something that they wanted?
Some of these concubines probably had children as well, right?
Maybe they already had children, you're right. Maybe they already had children.
Would that have been part of the problem with David? 'Cause
Correct. If they already had, they already been having David's kids, which we assume that some of them did. Because We hear that David has children with his concubine. It could have been some of these 10 concubines. They can't really be married off to anybody because they've been married to the king. I got news for you. People didn't want Diana to be married to anybody else. I mean, that's why people think that she was killed, so that she couldn't be married to anyone, especially Arab people. But the issue of being married and then having kids after you've had kids with the king or the heir apparent, that's a real issue.
Yeah, that
It's
is.
an issue, I should say, an issue, because that's what they call it, right? It's the real issue of the king. It is a problem. The king can't have somebody else have a kid. That's why he took Michal back and made her his wife, because he couldn't have Michal married to somebody else when he was king. Couldn't have a kid. Michal couldn't have a kid with somebody else and go, oh, maybe that's the kid. I mean, it's all a problem because of the genetics and their lack of knowledge of genetics. They couldn't do a DNA test on anybody. And they just had to assume that anybody who has a baby somewhere else could be connected somehow. Look, this is why a priest can't marry a divorcee or a widow. Even to this day, an Orthodox Kohen cannot marry a widow or a divorcee. That's a law, folks. If you are an Orthodox Jew and you are divorced or widowed or never been married and want to marry a divorcee, you can't.
Even if they get a get.
Even if they have a get, even if their husband's been dead 20 years, you can't marry them. There was a famous rabbi in LA, Avner Weiss, who got in trouble, lost his job in England when he moved to England because it turned out he married a divorcee. And he claimed he was Cohen, and he claimed, well, I'm not really a Cohen. Turns out I'm not really a Cohen. They said, you've been a Cohen your whole life. You can't now claim you're not really a Cohen. He tried to have the marriage not be an issue by saying he's not a Cohen. He married a divorce. I mean, he was divorced. He married another divorcee. It would have been like no one ever, like you and I would go, what's the big deal? In the Orthodox world, he lost his job because of that. So this is a legitimate issue even to this day with the Jewish community over who gets to marry. And again, we had a king of England who abdicated the throne, right, so that he could marry a divorcee. I mean, that happened in the last 100 years. And that actually happened. There's a whole new line of kings in England because of Edward VIII. I mean, that's a real thing that happened. None of these guys, Charles, Harry, none of those guys ever would have been around if Edward VIII hadn't decided to marry Wallis Simpson. I mean, think about that. A whole line of kings wouldn't exist. There would be no Queen Elizabeth. Her dad never would have been king. That's real. So, like, this matters. We're celebrating 70 years of the
So Edward wasn't
Queen.
part of
Never
Windsor?
would have been. No, it was her uncle. Her uncle would have been king, and she never would have been. Her dad never would have been king, and she never would have been queen. I mean, that really happened. It's weird to think about how these things play out in history. Again, you know, on our history, but for English people, it's important. Let's see where my wife is for the Jubilee. She's like, all of a sudden she started thinking, oh, maybe I'll go to a pub or something.
Was she in
You can
England?
do whatever you want. No, she's here.
Oh.
She was looking at local events
Oh,
in America
Oh.
because it's part of her culture. It's part of her, you know,
King's Head and San Juan.
we're one of the places that's doing something. Anyways, this is important for English people. It gets them all excited. Anyways, this, yeah, fine. Go have tea and chocolates. So this is what happens to people when they're part of this ministry. But again, did some of these women look at this and go, hey, God, I don't have to sleep with the king? I don't know. Who knows? All right. So now we're going to get to the good part. This is all good part. Here, listen to this part.
The king said to Amasa, call up the men of Judah to my standard and report here 3 days from now. Amasa went to call up Judah, but he took longer than the time set for him. And David said to Abishai, now Sheva son of Bichri will cause us more trouble than Absalom. So take your Lord's servants and pursue him before he finds fortified towns and eludes us. Yoav's men, the Karatites and Pelethites, and all the warriors marched out behind him. They left Jerusalem in pursuit of Sheva, son of Bichri.
So here we have this weird story of, well, a lot of people don't pay attention to, but I find it to be a really interesting political intrigue story with lessons to it for us. So David has a problem that there was this one guy, Sheva, who was mounting insurrection against him, saw this problem he had with Absalom and his son, and took advantage of the situation to revolt. And who is Sheva? He's a Benjaminite, the same tribe as King Saul. And so he's getting some of the people who didn't like David in the first place around him, and there's going to be this other insurrection. And so David says, we got to put this down. We got to put this election down. No, it's a good question. It's it is a
Oh, that's not a. Whatever that-
big read. He gives us look, we know he's a Benjamin. We know who Bathsheba's father is.
We do. That's right.
But what's interesting about this revolt is that it seems to be a Benjamin revolt. People who are, they want to go back to the way it was when their people. And he took advantage. This guy took advantage of this civil war. Right? He took advantage of it. This guy and says, look, David can't control his own family. He's just going around getting people behind him and saying, hey, let's get rid of David. Let's get rid of him. Get our power back. And so David is worried about it. He calls Amasa to get those armies together. So there's some delay. We don't know why. We don't know why. We really don't. We have to speculate. But remember, Amasa's in charge of the whole army, all the national army, the reserves, everybody. Whereas Yoav gets together the Karatites and the Pelethites, team. Talked about several times. Is David's own private army, probably mercenary armies, probably not Israelites, probably Philistines, people from Crete, people from the Greek Isles, good soldiers. They don't have any other allegiances to any other tribes. They're in David's employ, and they're people we trust. And they are tough guys. Another interesting analogy to our own day, because we're talking right now. I just read an article about it this morning about the Wagner group, Russian mercenaries that Putin has been using that are, special force people that, the Ukrainians love to be able to knock these guys out because, they feel like they're the army. They're not like the average everyday soldier in Russian soldier. They're already trying to, they're trying to get to those guys through a propaganda war. Wagner group people, they're literally trying to kill these guys and send a message to Putin that your professional army, your professional soldiers, killers, we're going to get them too. And that's what these 15 and 15 seem to be, which is David's private army. And it seems like, and it seems Yoav has his own group, and there's also, it seems more like David's in charge of the pre-team and platoon. Yoav, is his generals, and he sends them out. Yoav's people are separate. to them, but Yoav is his general.
But it's almost like Amasa is like the joint chief.
Yeah, and he's really in charge of, exactly, he's in charge, yeah. It's almost again like Yoav has his own Marines. Yoav has his own Marines. And those are the people that go out. Now, where's the Amasa?
They were near the great stone in Gibeon when Amasa appeared before them. Yoav was wearing his military dress with his sword girded over it and fastened around his waist in its sheath. And as he stepped forward, it fell out. Yoav said to Amasa, "How are you, brother?" And with his right hand, Yoav took hold of Amasa's beard as if to kiss him. Amasa was not on his guard against the sword in Yoav's left hand, and Yoav drove it into his belly so that his entrails poured out on the ground, and he died. He did not need to strike him a second time. Yoav and his brother Abishai then set off in pursuit of Sheva, son of Bichri, while one of Yoav's henchmen stood by the corpse and called out, "Whoever favors Yoav and whoever is on David's side, follow Yoav."
Yeah, so there's Yoav again doing what he does the best, which is eliminate people he doesn't want. Did it to Abner. Did it to Saul's staff. And now he's done it to Amasa, who is the one that David installed instead of him as the head of the army. Because again, David feeling that if he had Absalom's general, that maybe the people who liked Absalom would now like him. That's why David had brought Amasa in the first place. Yoav just got rid of him. His rival is not done. Now, as we said before, this guy, Rosemary Amasa, is Yoav's own cousin, nephew, flesh and blood. He's as related to, if not more related to Amasa than David is. They're both related to him, but he's really related to him. He's his uncle. He's also on the other side of this game, David, because David is related to Amasa. So this is a very close relation to him. This is not just some random dude that he stabbed and killed, cut his belly open. He cut him with one cut. The Bible just said he didn't have to cut him a second time. He cut him so bad the first time that his guts spilled out on the ground. He's dead. He didn't have to do another. That's it. Done. Guy's dead. His own flesh and blood. He trained for it. Yoav doesn't seem to carry on. And what Yoav did is he leans into him like he's in the pistol. Grab him with the right hand. The left hand just came. This is a guy who is a killer. Stone-cold killer. He's definitely a guy you want to have on your side. But what is the justification for this? What did he just do? I mean, look, the argument is made that Yoav does this because the justification, look, the rabbis have a real problem here. Any traditional commentary has a real problem. This is mafia style behavior. There's nothing, like this is worse than mafia behavior because this happens right in the middle of everybody sees this. It's not like they take him down into a basement and shoot him. They literally, he cuts him in front of everybody. So the rabbis have a problem with this because this guy is a stone cold killer. This isn't allowed. This is not, there's no way that this can be okay. So instead, the rabbis have to find a justification for this. What could be the justification for what Yoav did? The only justification we can have is that he's protecting David and he's protecting the kingdom because Amasa did not go off right away to get Sheba. Because he delayed, causes David and the kingdom to be in a predicament because he seems to either Amasa is really on Sheila's side. Maybe he doesn't really want David to succeed. Maybe he again still is hoping that David will fall. So Yoav does the righteous thing here by getting rid of an enemy within the court. That's a possibility. The other possibility is Yoav is killing one of his really only significant political rivals. I don't want this guy to be heavy. I'm the head of the army. Who's this guy? I don't care he's my nephew. I'm killing him. That's what we do. And as you can see, Yoav puts someone in charge of standing over the body, basically saying, if you're on David's side, you're on Yoav's side. So if you want to say that Amasa is a different, is on David's side, you're wrong. Yoav is on David's side. And so this is the consequence. This is what we have to take away from this. This, and I said, I would say this is the good piece. It's pretty horrible, but it's really powerful. And again, most likely, it really happened. This isn't some fantasy, some crazy dream that somebody had that this happened.
Does
This
David,
most likely happened.
is David in his palace letting this all happen?
While this is happening,
And is he aware of it?
while this is happening, it does not seem like David knew about it.
Okay.
But that's an interesting question. Does Yoav actually really do David's dirty work here? That is a possibility that David wanted Yoav to do this and counted on Yoav to do it, and maybe this is David's game the whole time. He actually makes Amasa the general so that Yoav will kill him.
So that,
Because David doesn't want to kill him. David doesn't want to look like the bad guy, right? Because if he kills Amasa, then all of Absalom's followers go, David's a brutal dictator. He's going to kill all of us. He's going to kill anyone who was on his side. Yeah, but Yoav killed him. He's like, hey, I didn't have anything to do with it. It's crazy Yoav. You know how crazy he is. I didn't tell him to do it. He killed Abner, and now he killed him. So does David really know what's going to happen? It is absolutely a possibility that David set up Amasa from the very beginning by putting him in a situation where he goes, oh, I know Yoav's going to kill him.
so fast forward to today, is that some of what we've experienced in the last many years?
What's interesting about
It's not
today,
gonna
Marcia,
make sense
so
either.
Marcia's question is, don't we see this today? I will tell you, generally speaking, in our world, very rarely is anybody clever enough or have enough patience to roll out any kinds of these scenarios that we see played out publicly, where anyone sets someone up for failure and then lets it happen. Does it happen? Yes. Does it happen frequently today? Not as often. Mainly because we have a lot of checks and balances, and people generally today don't have the kind of patience to roll this kind of stuff out. Does it happen sometimes? Yes. There are people that are nominated for positions that they know they'll never get, and they put them up before a Senate hearing because they know they've got to do it, and they roll it out, and they play it out, and they know all along this person is never going to get confirmed. That definitely happens. No question that happens. That's political theater, and we see it happen, and we know, but very rarely does it happen today in this way, with these kinds of, machinations where people are literally setting someone up to be murdered. But it does happen. It has happened in American history. It's not as easy to happen when officials are appointed or elected, and the consequence is not death. It's not as likely to happen. And we have a weird thing now in our country, where even if people commit political suicide, where you think, oh, there's no way they're ever coming back from that, they come back from it. So unless you can kill the person, which maybe has happened to you, depending on who you listen to, unless you can kill your political opponents, you can never really be sure you can get rid of them by setting them up for failure. So it's a risky business nowadays, because we've seen people come back from failure. We've seen people come back and go, oh, there's no way that person's ever going to be rehabilitated, and they end up coming back. But
They
oh,
just
it
write
happens.
books and movies now.
Yeah, but you see it. I mean, look, that there are people who've been set up, they've recorded people, or they've, caught them in compromising positions so that they can set them up for failure. But nowadays, you're never sure that's going to work. because people are like, oh, yeah, yes, he did that. It was 5 years ago. Go back now. So you're never really sure. But anyways, that is definitely a possibility that David knew all along that this was going to happen. So let's see what David's reaction is now to this cold-blooded murder in front of everybody. Now, again, there is a revolution, there's a revolt, there's an uprising going on in the background here, which is also part of the situation where David's going to go, hey, look, I got to take care of business. I can't worry about Yoav and Amasa. I'm fighting a rival right now. So let's see what David does.
Amasa lay in the middle of the road, drenched in his blood, and the man saw that everyone stopped. And when he saw that all the people were stopping, he dragged Amasa from the road into the field and covered him with a garment. Once he was removed from the road, everybody continued to follow Yoav in pursuit of Sheva, son of Bichri.
So what happens is that they leave him out there for everybody to see. Part of the political theater. This really is political theater. Where people see the dead body, they see this bloody mess. And what seems to have happened here is that it's a little too much. People are like, I get it. We're already following David. We're already following Yoav. You can put him away. And that's what they did. He drags him off to the side and covers him up so you can't see him. It was slowing the pursuit down because everyone was looking at that and he was like, well, you know what? We all know he's dead. It's time to get going. We got a battle to fight. So that's what happens. So he is out there. But eventually. I'm just telling you, these details, they're too detailed. This happened. Because it's not just that they killed him and they left him out. They left him out and then they brought him back in. And said, you know what? That detail to me tells me it happened. And again, who would make that up? Why would David make that up? It makes him look crazy. I mean, or at least the people around him look crazy. So.
Let's go back to the question of the scribes and when they're telling the story.
But somebody, correct, when they're telling the story, when the story was told, but somebody who was close to the details knew that detail and put that detail out. Somebody who knew what happened, even down to the fact that they covered the body, related that detail. So somebody wrote that down when it happened.
Sheva had passed through all the tribes of Israel up to Abel of Beth-Makkah, and all the Beerites assembled and followed him inside. Yoav's men came and besieged him in Abel of Beth-Makkah. They threw up a siege mound against the city, and it stood against the rampart. All the troops with Yoav were engaged in battering the wall, when a clever woman shouted from the city, listen, tell Yoav to come over here so I can talk to him.
Yeah, so what happens here is that Yoav chases Sheva into the city, Abel in Beth-Makkah, chases them into this town, and they're laying siege to it. And so it's another Israelite city. And a woman basically says to Yoav's forces, again, there's a clever woman, wise woman, says to the soldiers, get Yoav over here. Get Yoav over here. Now you can probably guess what she's about to say. Tell Yoav, and again, it's the whole woman face in the story.
He approached her, and the woman asked, are you Yoav? Yes, he answered, and she said to him, listen to what your handmaid has to say. I'm listening, he replied. And she continued, in olden times, people used to say, let them inquire of Abel, and that was the end of the matter. I am one of those who seek the welfare of the faithful in Israel, but you seek to bring death upon a mother city in Israel. Why should you destroy the Lord's possession?
Yeah, so this woman is arguing on behalf of her city,
So why is she called a handmaid?
because she's saying to them, I'm your handmaid. It's a way of basically
I
saying,
serve you.
yeah,
and I
I'm
serve
your,
Okay,
you know,
that makes sense.
she's humbling herself, right? She's your, I'm a heck.
I mean, I'm thinking of handmaid's tale.
Yes, it is definitely a position of subservience.
Mhm.
But she's saying to him, first of all, I'm subservient to you. And second of all, hey, this is a great town. We're a town of smart people here. Used to be, if you wanted to know where smart people were, you came to our town. Everybody in Israel knew you came to Abel. This is where all, you know, we know what's going on here. We're smart people. We're not jokers, right? And we like you. We're not in favor of this revolt. We're not supporting this revolt. We want nothing to do with this revolt. So why are you going to destroy us? She's begging on behalf of her uncle. She builds up her own city. And she says, look, we got no reason to be in this fight. Here's what it says.
Yoav replied, far be it from me to destroy or to ruin, not at all. But a certain man from the hill country of Ephraim, named Sheva, son of Bichri, has rebelled against King David. Just hand him alone over to us, and I will withdraw from the city.
Yeah.
The woman assured Yoav, his head shall be thrown over the wall to you.
Yeah, so this woman, Yoav tells him what's going. He tells her, "Hey, look, yeah, I don't want to destroy the city, but you've got this guy Sheila in there. You got to get rid of him. Shut him, get him out." So she says, "You'll get his head. I'm going to throw it over. You don't have to come in. We'll send him out."
Sounds like the cartel.
Yep, these are people who do not play around. These are not people who play around. Not even the women. Can you hear me a little bit better, Rosemary, or not?
Pardon?
Is the mic working better?
It's still hard. It's still a little hard to hear you.
Okay, well.
Yeah, that's a little better though.
All right, so, 'cause I don't want to hold this mic up. So she sends them a message, his head's coming out.
The woman came to all the people with her clever plan, and they cut off the head of Sheva, son of Bichri, and threw it down to Yoav. He then sounded the horn. All the men dispersed to their homes, and Yoav returned to the king in Jerusalem.
So that is the revolt of Sheba. It's over. Now, I don't know really what the clever plan was, because the clever plan seemed to be cutting off the head of Sheba. It's not really, it doesn't seem like that hard to figure out. We're gonna kill the guy and we're gonna throw his head over. It doesn't seem like much of a plan. Kill the instigator, the rebel, and throw his head over. Right?
The horn, is that a shofar?
Yeah,
That's
it
the
says-
Hebrew word shofar.
Yep, it actually says here that they
Right there, yeah.
Haba shofar, they blew the shofar, and the guys went home. War's over. War's over. The sound of the shofar tells them the war's over. Tells them the war's going on, right? Blow the shofar to get people down and blow it to send them home. So again, this clever plan, kill the guy. Doesn't seem like much of a plan, but I guess it's clever. And I guess they have to do something in order to send seals. It doesn't say who did it, but they did it. The people of the town did it. And the war's over. So now, Yoav once again saves the king. What happens to Yoav?
Yoav was commander of the whole army of Israel. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was commander of the Karatites and the Pelethites. Adoram was in charge of forced labor. Yehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was recorder. Sheva was scribe, and Zadok and Abiatar were priests. Ira the Yarite also served David as priest.
Yeah, all it says is that Yoav goes back to being, Yoav is the head of the army again. Yoav is the head of the whole army. Kol Hatzavah Israel. Benaiah is the head of the special forces, if you will, the professional mercenaries. If you, he's in charge of Benaiah, who is also Hebrew. He's Israel. And Yehoyada means to know the Lord. To know the God. Also the son of God. So he's an Israelite, Judah, Jewish guy. He's in charge of those mercenaries. So that's important, but it also tells us again, he was in charge of the religious groups, the priests, Sadok, we heard about them, Sadok and Abiatar, and it also says this guy, Ira. He's in charge of, he's a priest too, the religious group. And then we also read about this guy, Adoram, who's in charge of the forced labor. Elsewhere it's Adoniram. But it seems to be the same thing. Missing letter. This guy's in charge of forced labor. I'm not really sure what forced labor is, other than it seems to be people who are working for the king, who are either getting paid for it or not getting paid for it, but don't seem to have a choice. The reason why it's translated as forced labor is it doesn't say the normal word for avodah, the work. And when we read about mas, it is compelled work. It's the work that we did for Pharaoh. So here we see the kings are forcing people to do some type of work. Was it work service type situation where everybody had to do some work, whether they were a soldier or they had to do a couple months a year work for the king? It tells us that King David had this. His son Solomon will also have this. But it doesn't seem to be something that the Israelites would have thought that they should ever have to have. But they do have to have it when they have a king. So in addition to taxes, perhaps there was another thing that people had to do, which was do some work for the king. So this is what he has a guy in charge of that. He has a cabinet official in charge of forced labor. You also see the recorders and the people who keep track of everything. Very important job, scribes and recorders. The word must here comes from the word counting. So we're going to read a little bit more. And I don't know what to do about how to describe this story we're about to read, other than it's also about David settling stores.
Is David still in Jerusalem?
David is in Jerusalem. And let's read what happens in this weird story of David settling old scores. Weird. To tell you, it is very difficult for our sages, rabbis throughout history, to justify, explain. I don't know what to say about this story other than let's read it. And I will say that this is one of the more troubling stories in the Bible, in that it defies explanations. Doesn't mean people don't try. Oftentimes they don't, because it's too hard to explain and they just ignore it. I will tell you, I never really comprehended this story until I was probably in my 20s. Either I didn't read it, or I didn't know it, or I didn't think about it until somebody in rabbinical school, one of my teachers, one of the rabbis, had us read this story, and I thought to myself, how did I not catch this before? Maybe I hadn't read it. Maybe no one had talked to me about it. Maybe no one pointed it out.
And there's not a lot of commentary on it?
There's not a lot of commentary on it because it defies explanation. Let's take a look and shock your brains with this part. All right.
There was a famine during the reign of David, year after year, for 3 years. David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord replied, "It is because of the blood guilt of Saul and his house, for he put some Gibeonites to death."
Right. Now, does anyone remember who the Gibeonites were? Anybody? The Gibeonites, were non-Israelites who during the time of Joshua pretend to be Israelites. They come up with this ruse to basically say that they're Israelites. They're not. They're Canaanites. But they ingratiate themselves to us. Protected minority within our community. And what it seems has happened is that Saul killed some of them when he was king. Unjustifiably. He never reason to do it. He shouldn't have done it. According to this, God told David he had no right to do it. And that there's blood guilt on Saul and his house for what had happened. So here's what happens.
The king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not of Israelite stock, but a remnant of the Amorites to whom the Israelites had given an oath, and Saul had tried to wipe them out in his zeal for the people of Israel and Judah.
So that's the telling of it in it's pretty close. I wouldn't argue with most of that. We didn't really read about how Saul did this, but the Bible told us this is what's happened. And it says that Saul did it because he was zealous, right? He was wanting to get rid of all the Canaanite peoples. And so he killed these Canaanite peoples who were good Canaanite peoples. Protecting there, but they do exist. And so Saul did this horrible thing by killing them and doing it. Now it says that Saul did it because he wanted to protect the Israelite people. But this was not right. And so David calls them to him. You could probably start working in your head what's going to happen when he calls them Gibeonites.
So Saul didn't wipe them all out.
Didn't wipe them all out. And the ones that are left, David now calls to him.
David asked the Gibeonites, "What shall I do for you? How shall I make expiation so that you may bless the Lord's own people?"
So David basically says to them, we got to pay you guys back. We need to make reparations. We have reparations that we owe you. And if we make reparations and you bless us, then we're going to get the famine over. Right? So everybody gets what happens? Gibeonites are there's injustice done to the Gibeonites. It's causing us to be punished. How do we get this curse off of us? Uncurse us. That's what David said.
The Gibeonites answered him, "We have no claim for silver or gold against Saul and his household, and we have no claim on the life of any other man in Israel." And David responded, "Whatever you say, I will do for you."
Now, without even reading what happens next, they just told you what they want. We have no claim for money. We have no claim on the life of any other man in Israel. We don't have a claim on any other man in Israel. The implication being, you have a claim against Saul and his man. You can bet now. Yes. You can figure out, my friend.
And we're not taking money, we want blood. Thereupon they said to the king, "The man who massacred us and planned to exterminate us so that we should not survive in all the territory of Israel, let 7 of his male issue be handed over to us, and we will impale them before the Lord in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen of the Lord." And the king replied, "I will do so."
So what, 8 male means it was just
7.
that means it's children.
7 of Saul's kids will be sacrificed. Folks, this is a human sacrifice story. I don't know how else you can explain this. Now, again, it's couched in a sense of justice, a blood for blood situation. So let's assume that hundreds, if not thousands of Gibeonites were murdered. And they now are given the choice, the chance to ask for recompense. And now they've asked for 7 of Saul's family members to be murdered, impaled, literally impaled. Like the most non-Jewish thing that you're supposed to do is impale somebody, hang them, put them on a stick, whatever, something horrible, where everybody sees it.
Does this have any, and I don't, and Mary, you need to explain this to me, context to hanging on the cross? Does it, no, it's good. It just seems to me like there's something of that nature, but.
Well, I will tell you, that the Hebrew word that's used for this is
How much?
this is
Between Saul's.
this is decades.
That's what I thought.
This is decades later. This is decades later. This word used for impalement is an unusual word. It's not a normal word used for hanging. This does seem to be some type of
And I was.
public execution. But this is, it seems to be an example of sacrifice. Stop.
But back to Marcia's question, one time I was talking to the rabbi, and he explained to me that the hanging on the cross is for political prisoners. That's what they used.
That's what the Romans did.
Yeah.
The Romans did. So,
Because
That's
I
a
was
Roman
looking at
thing.
sacrifice, and I knew Jesus
That's
sacrificed.
but that's a Roman thing.
so this seems to be,
That's
there's a political aspect to this because of David and what he's gonna do here.
More sense.
But this, honestly, is almost like some weird pagan barbaric sacrifice that people do to get a god or gods to do something for them, which in this case is exactly why people did these kinds of things. To ask for rain, to ask for an end to the famine, to ask for, God's blessing on it. This is exactly what we're not supposed to do.
But the Canaanites were really pagan. Right?
Canaanites were pagan, so maybe again, totally Canaanite thing, but to turn Israelites over to them to do this, it's almost mind-boggling. Like, there's something about this story that seems so primitive and so Jewish law. And yet David is going to comply with it. Now, the argument, of course, is that, it's a crazy argument, which is there's a famine, people are dying. There's an injustice that was done before where thousands of people were exterminated, a lot of people were exterminated, a genocide had been committed against them for no reason. But it's almost as if, and again, to use the modern comparisons, or ones that we can figure out, it would almost be as if we went to a Native American tribe and say, we have a famine going on or some catastrophe happening in this country. And we go to somebody tells us that it's because we wronged the Native Americans. And we go to them and they say, well, we need you to, there was this general that went to war against us, this Custer-like guy or whatever, some guy that, was going to kill us all. And we need 7 of their descendants so that we can kill them. And once we kill them, then everything will be okay. I mean, that's literally what we would see as a modern equivalent of this. And it would be as if the president of the United States says, okay, I'm going to give you 7 of his family members. It's as antithetical to our way of practicing religion and invoking God as it was for them. They're not supposed to do this.
But there were many things that went on through the Bible.
Fine, but this is the king that's doing this. And I'm telling you something. let's read this and you come away with whatever conclusions you want. I gotta tell you, I never knew this story even existed.
And were the Gibeonites part of the Canaanites?
Canaanites, they're like the native peoples. Okay, here we go.
The king spared Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, because of the oath before the Lord between the two, between David and Jonathan, son of Saul.
Right, so Mephibosheth, remember, is lame, he's whatever, disabled, differently able. He is somebody that David spared because he loved Jonathan and because he made a promise to him that he's not going to turn him over. That would be your biggest conclusion. Who do you take? You take Mephibosheth. He's a public face of the house of Saul. So you kill him. Now David says, no, you're not going to kill him. Can't kill him. I gave him a private blessing. Can't take Mephibosheth. Can't take him. You gotta find other people.
Instead, the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, the two sons that Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, bore to Saul, and the 5 sons that Merav, daughter of Saul, bore to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Meholatite, and he handed them over to the Gibeonites. They impaled them on the mountain before the Lord. All 7 of them perished at the same time. They were put to death in the first days of the harvest, the beginning of the barley harvest.
Wow, happy Passover. This is the time of the barley harvest, Passover. Yeah, they impaled 7 Benjaminites. Gibeonites did that. And they did it with David turning them over. Now, who are these people? Well, 2 of them. There's another Mephibosheth. They're saying it's not that Mephibosheth, right? It's Mephibosheth and Armoni, who are actually sons of Saul. Rizpah was a concubine, was another one of Saul's wives. So there's 2 right there. There's 2 sons of Saul. That's pretty close, right? Pretty close. And then they took 5 sons of Merav. Who is Merav, right? And this is an interesting, right? Merav says, it says in this Bible that we have, Merav. But some translations or some versions of the Bible say
Michal.
holy moly. Some copies of the Septuagint say Michal. King James uses Michal.
And
It's to the
Michal's one of the
Septuagint.
wives, right?
Was one of King David's wives.
That's, I want to make sure I'm following you.
That's Saul. Saul had 2 daughters. Saul had a daughter, Merav, and he had a daughter, Michal. David's married to Michal. There was another woman named Merav. Now, we don't know if Michal ever had a daughter, kids. I mean, that's one of the problems. We don't know that she had kids. We read actually that he never slept with her again. But did she already have kids with her other husband, Palti, that she was married to when she was taken away from King David? So were those David's kind of like ex-wife's kids, right? Gets rid of them because those kids are right in line to be king. First of all, there's a question: were they maybe even his kids? We've heard. I mean, we don't know. Look, the Bible here doesn't even call her Michal, calls her Merav. They're so uncomfortable with it even being Michal, they don't even want to name her in our Bible. But there's an old copy of the Bible, the Septuagint, which is at least versions of it are older than the Bible that we have, right? Because the oldest Bible we have copy is 1,000 years old. There's Septuagint copies that are 2,000 years old. And we don't have this copy in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We don't have this text. We don't know. So we don't know what it said 2,000 years ago. But no matter what, there's a big problem here, which is that David just killed 7 more possible people who could claim the throne.
But if I was in the debate and I have David sign, if you're sitting there starving to death, you're going to do anything to solve the problem.
Look, Mike's point is that you got to end the famine, right? You have to end the famine. And if this is, look, The Bible said, God said that this is what
Right.
happened. It said at the beginning, David inquires of the Lord what to do, and God tells him. So David is essentially absolved of this because it says that God told him. Now, I will tell you that if the possibility even exists that God did not tell David to do this, that David woke up one day and said, I got to do something to get rid of Saul's family. Well, yeah. He just did it. Now, did he do it under the pretext of there's a famine and I got to do something? Or did this, I mean, if this really happened, then God essentially demanded a human sacrifice. That's all I'm going to point out. There's no good way of reading this story. Because on one side, God just had a human sacrifice done for him.
Yeah.
Or on the other side, David just got 7 possible rivals murdered.
But that's something David would do though.
David easily would have done this. And so we have this horrible story that exists in the Bible, and no one really wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about Ruth's pa, her 5 sons that just got murdered, or 2 sons that just got murdered, and the 5 other kids of Morav that just got
Is there
murdered.
midrash on this at all?
Not a lot. There is some midrash on this, but very little. I mean, like literally, the commentary. Like I'll show you the commentary on this. Where's Rashi's commentary? Did Michal give birth to these children? It was Merav who bore these children. The explanation is Merav gave birth to them and Michal raised them. That is why they are called by her name, because someone who raises male and female orphans in their house is considered that person gave basically midrash. Why we say that someone's adopted, they're called by their.
Because Michal never, to their knowledge, ever had children.
Yes, and Merav, Merav gave birth to them, so that's why there's a difference. That's why there's, and so Rashi knows that there's a difference. That's not the point. Like we're sitting here wondering, how did God let this happen? How did God demand this happen? How is this in the Bible? He's sitting here talking about whose kids there are. That is Rashi's question. I mean, seriously, Rashi just gave us an explanation for whose kids they are. And what's his takeaway? That we call the person by their adoptive parent. Great, it's a great lesson. It's not our question. It's not the question we should be asking us. So here's the JPS commentary tells us. It's most Michal as it, but the one we have doesn't have it. I mean, the Masoretic text doesn't have it. But you can see the questions are not, how is this story even happening? Let's see if there's, any. Nothing at all. Yeah.
It's almost like the story was embellished.
No, it's the story. They don't know what to do with the story. They
Right.
don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about the story. The weird thing is, it's in the Bible. It was kept. They didn't expunge it. We didn't have to have this story. And yet we have this story, and it's so troubling because
Maybe we have the story because those people that were killed, one of them was really killed.
maybe. But let's read. We didn't read the end of it, but there is. Look, it's a terrible story, and it's a terrible recognition that when you have kings, these kinds of things happen, right?
Yeah, there are many countries that are sacrificing people. North Korea.
People get sacrificed.
I mean, this is like, the Wicker Man or something.
Correct. That's what I walk away from. When this is the Wicker Man. This is like these weird pagan sacrifices that still people
For the harvest.
write horror stories about, tribes. I mean, this is what, what's it called? Midsummer was about Swedish, like Swedish rituals, and Wicker Man, the Druid type sacrifices that, still lingering on. It's a horror theme that you have in horror movies, that, these things are still going on somewhere. It's the lottery, Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. Crucible was more about witchcraft, about what it really means to do a blacklist and witch hunt people. But this is about, if you've ever read Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
The lottery.
That's a great little short story. Wicker Man they've done a couple of versions of it. They're, it's like the nightmare, some places human sacrifices are still going on. Well, it went on here. It's not the only place. We'll have one more human sacrifice in the Book of Kings that blows our minds, because it doesn't seem to be, well, it's problematic, but it doesn't seem to not work. Anyways, because they were put to death in the beginning of the harvest, and what happens here?
Then Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it on a rock for herself. And she stayed there from the beginning of the harvest until rain from the sky fell on the bodies. She did not let the birds of the sky settle on them by day, or the wild beasts approach by night.
So Rizpah, Saul's concubine, guards the bodies and keeps them from being ravaged by the animals. Can you imagine how horrific that is? To have your children just their bodies decomposing. What we've got is to keep the animals from coming in. I mean, this is one of the most heroic and most astounding things that I've ever heard. It was probably not a young person. So this is a woman who is, her job for a season to stop animals from.
Did she choose to do that? She chose.
Yeah. She stayed there by herself. That's insane.
David was told what Saul's concubine Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, had done. And David went and took the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead, who had made off with them from the public square of Beth-shan, where the Philistines had hung them up on the day the Philistines killed Saul at Gilboa. He brought up the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan from there, and he gathered the bones of those who had been impaled. And they buried the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan in Zelah, in the territory of Benjamin, in the tomb of his father Kish. And when all that the king had commanded was done, God responded to the plea of the land thereafter.
That's how it is. That's how the famine begins when all of this happens. This is unbelievable.
So maybe this is like a just so story to explain why this tomb is where it is.
There definitely seems to be an explanation for how David took care of Saul's family finally and buried them all, gave them a proper burial, if you will. He's not responsible necessarily, as we know, for Saul and Jonathan dying. The Philistines killed him. He's nowhere near the battle. But,
So they're trying to explain why, if Saul was and these people were all killed in these other places, why is their tomb where it is?
yeah,
If they were killed by enemies, you wouldn't expect their bodies to have been returned.
yes. And David, to some extent, becomes the hero by getting the bodies and burying them. So to some extent, look, David gave permission, brought the people to be impaled. The last 7 people that are part of this burial, he brought those. He arrested those people and brought them to the Gibeonites. He's 100% responsible for delivering them. The Bible seems to be, though, getting him off the hook for why they have to be killed. it's essentially God that says there has to be uh, blood for blood.
Remember who wrote this, so it's David Grimes.
So, yeah, David's scribes are definitely writing this. David, though, gets off the hook as much as possible for the purge of Saul's family. Saul's family is purged. It's purged. They are wiped out. Saul's family is wiped out. No way around it. They are wiped out. The Bible went through a very convoluted and very difficult explanation for why David is not responsible for it. At least the last 7 people, David 100% was complicit and was involved in their death. Was David involved in Saul and Jonathan's death? The Bible says no question. He wasn't anywhere near that battle. The Philistines killed him, and he was not responsible. Okay, fine. The Bible will take that. But the point is that at the end of the day, what's the final situation? Anyone from Saul's family who possibly could be a rival is dead. Mephibosheth is the only one alive that we know of, and he can't be king. He's not eligible, and he does not have a family. He is not going to be a threat. And David gets to keep him almost like a pet in his house. But everybody else that was from Saul's family, that could ever be alive, is dead.
Where is the jail?
No, it is in Benjamin. It's not far, because remember, Jerusalem is in the territory of Benjamin. So it's not far from Jerusalem. Benjamin is not a big territory, so there's no way it's more than 10 miles away. But it is not in Jerusalem. It is not in the royal burial of where Jerusalem's kings are buried, which we have the Valley of the Kings in Jerusalem. It's where we should be Absalom's monument to us. We should be a place where Absalom was supposed to be buried, maybe not buried. It's probably never was buried there. But that area was a place where kings were buried.
And this place is in the place that you is there now.
There is a place where we think where this is. We don't know for sure where Saul's burial place is. It takes years for Saul to be buried. Yeah, remember, Saul made sure that Saul's remains. David went to get Saul's remains and bring them back from. Well, he brought him back. But he finally lays him to rest. But he almost doesn't lay them to rest until everyone else is dead too. I'll put Saul's body to rest when everybody else in Saul's family is laid to rest. Now, the rain and the seasons and the climate change and everything else comes to an end. It's all good once this is all done. Now, what's interesting though, is there seems to be an explanation that the rain didn't start. The harvest didn't get, the famine wasn't over until everyone gets buried. So what's interesting about the way that the story gets told, it's not, there is justice for the Gibeonites. There is the purge of Saul's house, all this times. But not until everyone's buried does it get fixed. Which is almost a recognition that David had to do right by Saul too. And what this woman Rizpah did was seriously powerful. This woman Rizpah is one of the great heroines in the Bible that we never hear about. Because this woman risked her life, because the king could have killed her. She was risking her life out of the elements. Anyone could have attacked her, anyone could have killed her too. And it's not until her heroism, to some extent, is accounted for that this is also fixed too. So it's almost as if the writer, the scribe, the editor, whoever puts the story finally together, says that it's only when this was done that God responded to the plea.
So if I'm correct, and please, because I get people mixed up, Saul is the one who did. Okay.
Okay, okay, excellent.
Yes. but
I'm
Saul-
watching the theater going, someone walking behind someone, it's all behind me.
So Saul is, Saul's end to some extent doesn't happen until he's married. But then again, until the rest of his family. You're not old enough. when you're- These people were younger, the people that got killed were younger than me. These are people that David now doesn't have to worry about. But, wow.
And just put things in place for David that he didn't have to think about any of Saul's children, like you said earlier.
Yeah, look, David has a problem and his own son starts to revolt. How much more likely are Saul's kids to start a revolt? So we know how David was worried about, what could happen. And so I'm not arguing that what David did was right. And I definitely don't want to make that clear, but yes, to follow up on Marcia's point, there was a legitimate fear that these people were going to start a revolt. If Sheba, who does no claim on genetics to be king, can start a revolt, how much more within the tribe of Benjamin in this area, within Ephraim and Benjamin, how much more so one of Saul's own family members who's already can claim, hey, I'm a legitimate heir. Why is this guy David king? We don't need Judah to be in charge. So
Fast forward to today and us coming into just an incredibly bad drought, and everybody having a million reasons why. Does this parallel to what happened there?
well,
Right.
it depends.
Right? I
It
mean,
depends if we're gonna offer up human
Well, no, I
sacrifice.
don't mean that. I mean, in the sense of, you know what I mean? No, in the sense of,
Well, no, there is an interest.
I mean, that
Which is
now
what-
they're saying
what-
it's global warming
So,
and it's
so
saying.
what are we willing to sacrifice in order to get rain? That's an interesting question, right? Are we willing to sacrifice productivity? Are we willing to sacrifice farmers in Bakersfield? Are we willing to sacrifice how many times we can water our lawns? Are we willing to sacrifice whether we can fill up our pools? What are we willing to sacrifice? So there is a question.
Well,
There
and
are
who we
sacrifices.
blame, and who we blame?
There are
we blaming,
sacrifices.
the weather is cyclical, or are we blaming
That's correct.
global warming, or?
That's correct. Who else, and what do we blame? Do we blame the fact that we have these policies? Do we also blame the fact that we have solutions in front of us that we don't, we have an entire ocean that we can desalinate and we can bring in as much water as we want. We're not doing it because we don't want to deal with the consequences of Israel's done it, and Israel's done the fact that
And they have one in San Diego as well.
That's
Yeah,
true.
but Israel's completely taken off its reliance
Right.
on water from the Jordan Valley, which was a political and international consequence.
Why?
Why do we not?
I mean, why is it, I mean, it's a good thing that they're not taking the water.
Yeah.
So why is it political?
Oh, because Israel had a problem with Jordan, and who controlled the Jordan River, and who got that water, because Jordan wanted to have the water, and, headwaters were up in Syria, so Syria could dam that water up, and, even further north, Turkey can, dam water up even further up the north. So who controls that water? Israel basically took itself out of the problem and say, you guys can do whatever you want with the water. We're taking the water out of the ocean. So
Get it out of here.
that is another possibility. Look, you have to have the political wherewithal and the leadership in order to do that. And people don't want to do it. So yeah, there's sacrifices that we have to make, and whether we're willing to make those sacrifices, I don't know.
And we don't have a king.
We also don't have political leadership. And there's not one party. I mean, it's not one party to blame. I mean, I guess there's one party who's in control of California, but the reality is that there is no decisive leadership willing to take and to deal with what we need to do. Because yeah, the answer is right in front of us. You could easily do it. And I mean, it's not easy because it's very expensive, but we could do it and we could end our water shortage like that. If we could sell, because we have an endless coastline that we can draw water from into a place that is closer. Instead of bringing the water from Arizona and from the Colorado River, we could literally take it from our backyards. And instead of bringing that water, which evaporates and which causes problems for people, look, Lake Mead is at 30%. It's because of us.
And they're thinking about draining Lake Powell.
It's because of us.
Are they really?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So they're thinking of, yes, they're thinking of having Powell completely done.
Wow.
So these are the questions we're gonna have to answer. And again, look, these are all sacrifices we make. Somebody doesn't go boating on Lake Powell anymore. You know, I mean, in reality, those are questions. These are
Who
not,
knows what
these are not gonna
bodies are
keep us, these are not gonna keep us up in it. And the question of sacrifices are definitely that, right?
The bodies that have.
The bodies that are coming out, listen, everyone's talking about the bodies that are coming out of the Lake Mead. I'm amazed they haven't found more. I mean, the fact that they found 2 bodies.
Who's drinking that water?
We're drinking that water, you're right. We are.
Well, they were in Toronto.
We're drinking that water. The fact that this is like only 2. Anyways, bows, we get back to that, the bows of the good fellows that are out in the burial that'll happen there. It's an interesting question. Maybe if we get those bodies out of Lake Mead, we give them a proper burial, we get water again.
There you go.
What's the solution? Got to identify those people and
Rabbi,
provide
you're
a
so
proper
good.
burial.
Oh, God,
You
you
never
got
thought-
the
you never
answer.
thought you'd get that answer, but there you go.
Go call the
There's some guy
politicians.
that needs to have a
So
proper.
how long had Saul's bones laid where they were before they?
So Saul's bones were in David's possession at least for the last probably 20 years. The other bones, they were up there for a few months. They were up on. They were
But
down
don't
on
they
Mount
just,
Gibeon.
don't they decompose?
Yeah, but they're bones. They're bones,
Oh, yeah.
and they're gonna bury these bones together. And that's what they did.
Them both.
Yeah. So we're going to.
Where it came
We're
from.
gonna, we're going to read next week about some of the other battles that King David has, and man, oh man, we're almost at the end of King David's story, but it is some weird stuff.
So,
What is it weird today?
I know, but this is really weird, and this is our history. That's the amazing thing. Is that this was our, so thank you everybody for being here on the last day of May. And
we have class tomorrow night.
thank you, Rosemary. Yes, we have class tomorrow night, which will be the first day of June. See, I'm good at the calendar. I know that it's June 1st. And don't forget, tonight, June 4th, we're celebrating Shavuot, receiving the Torah. We are the hosts. So our
Any
closing-
idea about how many people are coming?
I have no idea. We are gonna have cheesecake with blintzes and those kind of foods. Ice cream, but it's 7 o'clock on Saturday, and we are gonna be doing something very interesting. As a more interactive experience for Shavuot. We're gonna be thinking about stories of the Bible, but also our stories. And how our stories are actually mirrored in the Bible, or the Bible mirrors our stories. I'm not really sure. Which came first? Human beings, because we existed before it was written, though the rabbi said the Torah has existed. But human beings tell stories, and that's what we're doing Shavuot this year, is our stories. So, it'll be 7 o'clock. Well, folks, take care and have a good rest of the week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
On this, on the Zoom and on Facebook too. Facebook. All right.
Is there a Shabbat